What's up, everybody? Thralls Miller here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick
Miller,
and we have an album review for you. And we're going to start off with something a little bit more underground this week. I know there's some other releases, but this one caught my eye because I actually have their first EP, and I was like, you know what? Let's see what the full length sounds like, because this is their debut full length. So we are going to go over the debut full length from Coffin Mulch, not Coffin Rot, not Coffins, not Coffin Curse, not Coffin Born. Coffin Mulch. We got to get that straight because there's a lot of fucking coffins out there. Anyway, this is their debut album, Spectral Intercession. This comes out on the 30th of June on Memento Mori Records. This band formed in 2018 in Glasgow, Scotland. This, again, debut full length. I have their first EP, Septic Funeral, which was a nice slab of gross old school death metal. And that is definitely the style this band plays. And I would say more so on this one than the EP. This one leans a little bit harder on the old school Stockholm scene, because we're going to be bringing up Entombed and Dismember and Bloodbath probably a lot.
A lot. And saying that isn't like a knock on this at all, because we love all of those things and they do it really well. The mix is pretty good. I have a little bit of an issue with like the kick drum sometimes when the double kick comes in, but like Nick brought up originally the guitar tone, and I dialed into it, and man, the guitar tone is awesome.
It absolutely snarls. It's that filthy old school, like very 90s sounding HM2 tone. Like, you know, it's been polished and treated as, you know, the years have gone on and made it sound better in some circumstances, but there's something about that old school kind of sizzle that just makes it sound extra gross. And the mix, I believe, was originally done by Tommy Duffin, but this was mastered by Dan Swano, who, lots of credentials. So yeah, we can't even go into that because that would take up like 3 videos.
I like the way Tommy kind of takes the 2 guitar tones in that typical old school fashion there. You got that one guitar tone that's really bright, crispy, crunchy, gnarly. It's a little bit more up front, and you got that underlying just gross guitar. And when they come through together, it just fills everything out sonically.
And the drums are probably the thing that I think sound most Swano-ish. They have a nice, rich sound. The bass drum has a good punch to it, and the snare is nice and like very audible. It's got a good thwack to it. And one of my complaints is when you have like a very overpowering guitar tone, sometimes in all that sonic fucking fury, you lose a bit of the snare drum. You kind of get that lost. The snare drum stays punchy throughout, and while this band definitely lays more on like D beats and grooves, there's a fair amount of pockets of blast beats, and every time they do that, the snare stays nice and just like prominent in the mix.
Yeah, and the blast beats don't trail off, or you don't lose them or anything, and I think that's the drummer. That comes down to the drummer and the technique, and he's got it. He's on it.
Now, I'm going to get back to the Entombed comparisons, because right away I was getting that with the opening track on here. Again, D beats, kind of fast. I love how this album opens.
Yeah.
It opens with a fucking freak out. Like, not like an intro or anything like that, or a sample. Just the band playing nonsense and screaming.
Yeah, it's definitely a freak out. Like, ah!
Yeah.
But it's cool because they do it long enough to make a point, but not so long that it becomes annoying. It's almost like they sat there and was like, all right, yeah, this is annoying now. So like 5 seconds, just stop it there.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
And then, right into D beats, and right away, like, again, these Entombed comparisons. Like, I hear a lot of Entombed's first 3 albums. There's even some like more kind of death and roll-ish moments that pop up, especially the opening to Fall of Gaia. That definitely reminds me of something off of Wolverine Blues in particular. But this is just firmly lashed on to that almost kind of punky death metal, like, maybe like a little bit of Autopsy kind of mixed in there. But again, that heavy HM2 tone, the kind of snarling bass underneath, and the vocals. The vocals are kind of similar to at least the vocal style that you heard on Left Hand Path in particular. But
they kind of like fall. They're like, I don't know, they're kind of like back in the mix a little bit, and they got a little bit of harshness to them. I think if for me, it would be nice for him to be up front a little bit and filled out on the lower end EQ wise, and just kind of fill out his voice a little bit, give it a little more depth to it. But you got to create some room somewhere for snare hits and bass and all that stuff. So, but it would have been nice to have the vocals a little deeper and a little more up front.
Honestly, the vocals are probably the most raw sounding thing in here. There's not a lot of effects on them. Honestly, it sounds like either he did all of his vocal takes inside of a porta potty, or he was screaming inside of a Dixie cup, because there's like this kind of cupped sound to it. And I like that. And it kind of gives it, again, that more punky appeal. Like, you know, it really works well in songs like Mental Suicide when they break into like the kind of thrashy blasts on there. But when it comes down to like some of the more like slower, sinister moments, I don't know if it necessarily fits, because Mental Suicide and Infernal Mass in particular open up with some absolutely sinister, like more doom metal riffs.
Yeah, with the toms going and stuff, it works really well, and then the band does a really good job, like with those build-ups, and a lot of the stuff on the album, they really have that build-up thing honed down.
Yeah, I mean, there's songs in here that just flat out explode, like In the Grip of Death, which is like the shortest track on here. But there are some songs here that take their time to build up, and I think those end up being kind of the strongest ones, because when this band does explode, it often explodes into what I would say is very familiar territory. Nothing wrong with this familiar territory, because I love it. But after a while, I was like, man, this really feels like kind of on the nose. But a song like Gateway to the Unseen, it has a little bit more atmosphere to it. Like, you get these kind of haunting knocks, and it's kind of like this creepy din in the background. And then it opens up into just an absolutely amazing fucking riff. Like, honestly, my favorite riff on this entire album.
Yeah.
Doomy, sludgy. It sounds just flat out filthy. Like there was like fucking, Coffin Mulch on the fucking guitars. I don't know what Coffin Mulch is. I don't know if I want to know. Like, do you feed a coffin through a
mulcher, man?
A mulcher, I guess? With the body in it, though. Like, I figure it's got to be with the body in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You need fertilization for the flowers, the flower bed. Mulch and fertilizer all
Your
around.
whole neighborhood's going to fucking stink, though.
It's super effective, though.
I'm sure the neighbors are going to call the cops. But the transitions in this song are awesome. There's a cool like turnover section with the drums that kind of build up the riff. You get in this just nasty fucking groove, and then break into some faster material. And faster material is all over here, so are like death doom moments, but I think this is kind of a thing where like the song is just paced really well. Like it gives time for these riffs to really sink in. And honestly, you know, this is one of those riffs I think that has like a tremendous amount of character. Like instantly you kind of hear it, it's like, yeah, that is just fucking gross.
Yeah, and despite us like enjoying the album really up until, or at least me, up until this point, this Gateway to the Unseen was the first time I was like, ooh, like I kind of did one of those, like, ooh, yeah, listen to that. That's some good shit right there. Really super tasty, nasty riffs in there. The pre-chorus and the chorus, like you said, they transition, they flow really well. It just seems like this song was a little more thought out, maybe, than the other ones, or at least constructed a little tighter.
I mean, I would say a good chunk of this is, you know, a bit of worship. You know, worship to the bands that heavily influenced them, heavily influenced death metal in general, and they do a good job of it. It's just, you know, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is very familiar. Like, there's a lot of tremolo riffs on here. And I love tremolo riffs all the fucking time. But at the same time, they don't have as much character to them. Like, you have a couple that really do stand out on Into the Blood. I really do like that one. It has, like, a really solid kind of sinister groove to it. And occasionally you get, like, a harmony with the other guitars kind of playing off of it.
Very rare, though.
But very rare. So, like, when it comes down to the character on, like, one of the staple riffs of a death metal sound, you know, they kind of feel a little bit stock. But honestly, it's when they kind of slow down and get down to either, like, a good mid-tempo groove or flat-out death doom that I think they're the strongest. The last track, Eternal Enslavement, is an absolutely nasty beast of a song. Longest track in the album at over 6 minutes. Great build-up. Isolated sections of build-up. You get drums first. Yep. And you get this sinister bass line kind of creeps in, and then a big pick slide, and we are off to just like these big single chord, just gross riffs.
Heavy drums and everything in there. And I'm glad they circled back around to that riff, because usually when you have a badass intro like that, it's like, okay, it's the intro and we're never going back to it. But they circle back around to it and fucking dig it.
Yeah, and the fact that these are big single droning chords, you get to hear the power of this tone just kind of drone out. Because a lot of this, again, fast paced, a lot of like, you know, quick chugging and again, tremolo riffs, but when they get down to these death doom moments, man, you can really just kind of hear the power, and it kind of opens up the song a little bit, because some of the songs, they're kind of run together a little bit. It's kind of that punky attribute where you just kind of play as fast and as hard as you can, and sometimes it's a little bit sloppy, but for the most part, it's, you know, just kind of about the energy. But the doom energy, that's something I absolutely loved in here. It just kind of creates its own atmosphere, because even when it comes down to atmosphere in here, there really isn't that much.
Like you're saying with the Doom stuff, they really do it really well. So maybe we kind of want them to do more of it because it stands out in the album. And not to say that sticking to like a straightforward HM2 old school is bad. It's not.
It's not.
But it's when we hear the trem with the same beat, or da 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 da, for 30 years. So there has to be something to stand out a little bit, and it doesn't really do it because it is so like 101 kind of. It's not bad, but it doesn't stand out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bands currently that still do this, both old school bands and, like newer bands that just are straight up HM2 worship. So, like, the competition's kind of steep in there. Mm-hmm. Like, you definitely have bands that kind of take a little bit more melodic approach. You have ones that are way more on the punk side, almost kind of like crust punk, except with like a metal attitude. Some of them are just, again, straight up dismember and entombed worship. There's a lot of different avenues within this subset within a subset of fucking death metal.
Yeah, I get it when you're writing something and you're like, oh, shit, it sounds like this. Because I have stuff like, oh, wow, that sounds like Cannibal Corpse. And I'm thinking like, well, no shit, it sounds like Cannibal Corpse. It's all you fucking, it's like 80% of your fucking listening.
I mean, you could be listening to far worse things. And I do want to bring up that I think this is an ever so slight change in terms of the material that was on the EP. Like, this one feels way more focused on just like that flat out entombed worship sound, like, again, very left hand path. The first one, that EP, kind of sounded more just straightforward old school death metal in general. Like, I would even say like, closer to like, Benediction and shit like that. This, I don't know, it's a slight shift, but either way, I still think they do it really well. Again, there's a lot of killer death metal out there, and it's kind of hard to stand out sometimes, even if you're just kind of doing stuff that is, by the numbers and like very much focused on a particular sound. But I think this band did it pretty well. So overall, I'm going to give this 3 stars. I like it. It's enjoyable. It is very reminiscent of a lot of death metal that I love. That also might be a bit of an issue just because I feel like they kind of go to the well a little bit too often. But I did find some elements in here that I really liked, especially the more death doom elements. Like, that is where the riffs really fucking just stand the fuck out. Like, there are some legit bangers on here. Gateway to the Unseen, if any track I would recommend off of this album, it would probably be that one. That riff absolutely smokes. But yeah, I think this is a solid album. First debut, so they're probably still working out elements of their sound too. So I urge you to check this out if you were a fan of the first 3 Entombed albums, Dismember, Bloodbath, and maybe a little bit of Autopsy in there too. Yeah, congratulations, you already listened to good death metal, and you can just add this to it.
And I'm going to go a little bit higher, 3.5 out of 5, just because mainly like the last half of that album, or this album, really kind of got me interested again. Because before it was kind of, we were talking about the 101, the sticking to the basic thing, and it was then becoming apparent going up to the middle that it was just that. And then once you get to like even Fall of Gaia a little bit, Gateway to Unseen, definitely. Then it's like, okay, this is cool. This is something. So the last half of that album really slides in. And there's minor gripes I have about it, but this is a great foundation for this band, a great first album. One thing they do really well, I thought, that we haven't really touched on in this, is the solo breaks. The solo breaks are great. They have great underlying riffs to them. They all make sense. The solos stand out, and you can hear them. They're not overly long or anything. They're not overly like flamboyant or complicated in any way, but they really fit for what they're doing. They stand out. They sound great. The technicality is there. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. These guys got a really solid foundation moving forward. But the Death Doom is where you guys shine, and that follow that strong structure or whatever you did. Gateway to the Unseen. That song is really well constructed. So you guys really deserve kudos, particularly for that song in particular.
So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. I believe our site's still under construction.
Under construction.
But, you can still get our Patreon link. It's like up in the corner. But yeah, we will definitely have that up relatively soon. And we will eventually have some stuff in our store, because that's eventually going to happen. And we will definitely announce it probably in front of this camera that is judging us right now.
Yeah, I'm working on incorporating the color scheme and everything on the website without knowing what the fuck I'm doing. So,
winging it. That's what we do here. We also have a giveaway going on for when we eventually reach 15,000 subscribers, which we are less than 50 away now. So that window is closing, and if you want to get in on this, all you have to do is comment in the video link down below. It's also playing automatically on our channel. Once we hit the mark, I will do a little comment randomizer thing, and one lucky metalhead out there will win a stack of 11 CDs, and we will be at 15,000 subscribers, which is just a
huge,
ridiculous number for what we do. Are you kidding? You guys will be watching literally anything else, but we're kind of glad you don't. This has been an absolutely amazing ride. Tons of stuff coming. I mean, we haven't even really got down to like listening to the Judas Priest stuff yet, because that's going to be such a long fucking listen. And I've got a whole bunch of shit I'm catching up on, but we're going to get down to that one eventually. And yeah, plenty of stuff coming. Yep. Thank you guys so much for every bit of support you guys give us. It's fucking amazing. So you guys are the real heroes here. And with that, I will thank you one more time, and we will catch you later.